Hey, today's video will be a first part of the constellations and fixed stars in astrology. I have to talk a bit about fixed stars and constellations in astronomy too, as these are related. I do not know how many parts will there be of this series, and probably they will not go one after another. However, I do know that the next video will also be about this same topic, but probably about fixed stars, as today I will stick to constellations. So let's begin. In the early days of astronomy, stars and celestial bodies were divided into two groups. One was consisting of the fixed stars and the other of wandering stars or planets. The fixed stars were thought of as being immovable until, I guess, is it considered recently? You tell me. In 1718, Edmund Halley, an English astronomer, mathematician, and physicist who is actually more famous for being the first to calculate the orbit of a comet, later named after him, so Halley's Comet. Anyway, he discovered that fixed stars actually have proper motion and that they had changed position since the time of the ancient Greek astronomers Ptolemy and Hipparchus. More specifically, three brightest stars, Sirius, Procyon, and Arcturus. And in fact, Sirius appeared to have moved distinctly since observed by Tycho Brahe only a century and a half earlier. This motion was not noticed by ancient cultures because it requires precise measurements over long periods of time to notice. Now, each fixed star we see in the sky, or in the night sky that is basically a sun, very similar to our own sun in structure and general composition, differing only in size and temperature. The distance of the star, when measured in kilometers or in miles, depending which system you know and use, metric or imperial, is such huge and enormous quantity it is almost impossible to grasp it. So in order to reduce these figures to manageable dimensions, such distances are expressed in light years, the unit of which is the distance traveled in 1 year by light moving at a rate of about 9.7 trillion kilometers or 6 trillion miles, thus making nearest to us Toliman, as it is also called Bungula or Regil Centaurus in Alpha Centauri system, the closest star system to Earth. Now its distance is about 4.3 light years, and one of the furthest is Polaris, the brightest star in the constellation Ursa Minor, its distance being about 434 light years, maybe more, maybe a little less. The earliest method of identifying stars was by the name. All of the large stars and many small ones have distinctive names, and the Arabs gave nearly all the names in use in the Western astronomy. But they were probably outrun in their lists of star names by the Chinese, who seem to have had a very comprehensive system of naming stars. Of course, today, identification by name has been almost entirely replaced by other and better methods. However, for astrological purposes, where only a fairly small amount of stars needs to be considered, it still remains a much easier method than any other, using the names, that is. Now, I could go on and on about astronomy of it all, but I always say, and I have given myself a word, that I will not make these videos too long. And because I want to keep it interesting, I shall now begin with the interpretation. Not of the fixed stars, but before that, some of the constellations, or better said, zodiacal constellations. So these are the actual irregular star groups lying around the ecliptic, or Earth's path around the sun. These should not be confused with the signs of the zodiac, which are regular divisions of the ecliptic bearing the same names. So I will name a few and how they can be seen astrologically. Let's start with Andromeda, one of the 48 constellations listed by Greco-Roman astronomer Ptolemy and one of the 88 modern constellations. Legend has it Andromeda was the daughter of Cepheus, king of Ethiopia, and his wife Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia boasted that beauty of Andromeda surpassed that of the Nereids, sea nymphs, so Neptune, or Poseidon, sent a sea monster, Cetus, to lay waste on the country. The oracle of Ammon told her father Cepheus that the only way to save his country was to sacrifice his daughter to Cetus. So she was chained to a rock, but was rescued by Perseus, who, riding through the air on Pegasus, slew the monster by turning it to stone with the Medusa's head and took Andromeda as his bride. After Andromeda's death, Athena placed her in the sky as a constellation. This is a northern constellation sitting above the constellation of Pisces, between the constellation Pegasus and the constellation Perseus. It spans over 30 degrees of the zodiac in the signs Aries and Taurus. In astrology, according to Ptolemy, the influence of this constellation was similar to that of Venus, even though the legend might lead one to suppose some connection with Virgo. It is said to bestow purity of thought, virtue, honor, and dignity upon its natives, but also to cause battle with imaginary fears and a tendency to become easily discouraged. In tarot, it is represented by the Stars card. In the Middle Ages, it was said that if Mars afflicts the luminaries from Andromeda, and especially if in an angle, this caused death by hanging, decapitation, crucifixion, or impalement. Next, Aquarius constellation is said to represent Ganymedes, son of Kaliroe, youthful shepherd boy, the most beautiful of mortals, who was carried to heaven by an eagle to act as a cupbearer to Jupiter. Others say it is Deucalion, son of Prometheus, who was carried to heaven in memory of the mighty flood from which only he and Pyrrha were saved. Ptolemy said that the stars in the shoulders of Aquarius operate like Saturn and Mercury. Those in the left hand and in the face do the same. Those in the thighs have an influence more in agreement with Mercury and in a less degree with that of Saturn. Those in the stream of water have power more similar to Saturn and moderately to that of Jupiter. Now, I'm mentioning this constellation as it is one of the oldest of the recognized constellations along the zodiac. It is lying in the southern sky, and in tarot it is represented by the 14th tarot trump, Temperance, over which the virtue the constellation appears to have some rule. Canis Major, or the Greater Dog constellation, is said to represent the dog set by Jupiter to guard Europa, whom he had stolen and transferred her to Crete. Others say it could have been other hound belonging to either Actaeon or of Diana's nymph Procris, or the one given to Cephalus by Aurora, or one of the dogs of the Orion. Ptolemy states that the stars of this constellation, with the exception of Sirius, are like Venus. It is said to give good qualities, charity, and a faithful heart, but violent and dangerous passions. There are possible dangers from dog bites or night fears. It sits south of constellation Gemini, between constellation Orion and constellation Argo Navis, and it spans over 20 degrees of the zodiac in the sign of Cancer, containing 11 fixed stars, including, of course, the brightest star, Sirius, or Sirius the dog star. The tarot card connected with this constellation is the 18th tarot trump, the Moon. Canis Minor, or the Lesser Dog, represents Mera, the hound of Icarus, who drowned himself on the account of his grief at the death of his master, while others say it was Helen's dog who was left in the Euripus, a narrow stretch of water. Now, Ptolemy does not give any information on the influence of the constellation itself, but he does describe the main major star Procyon. It is, however, interesting that it seems to be universally associated with the ideas of drowning and water in general. It also sits in the south below the Gemini constellation between Orion and Hydra constellations, and it spans 6 degrees of the zodiac in the sign of Cancer. It is also associated with the tarot trump, the Moon, as is Canis Major. Somewhat connected with these is the constellation Butes, or the herdsman. It is said to be Arcas, whose mother Callisto was transformed into a bear by Juno. While hunting, Arcas came upon his mother, and unaware it was his mother in a form of a bear, pursued her to the temple of Jupiter, where he would have killed her and afterwards been killed by the priests. So in order to prevent this, Jupiter took pity on them and took them both into heaven, where Butes is still seen pursuing the bear. Other story says Butes is Icarus, who was killed by some shepherds he had made drunk with a pitcher of wine given to him by Bacchus. In consideration of the grief of his daughter Erigon and their hound Mera, Jupiter placed her father in heaven as Butes, together with herself as Virgo, and the hound as Canis Minor. So according to Ptolemy, the influence of this constellation is like that of Mercury and Saturn, though the star Arcturus is like Mars and Jupiter. It is said to give prosperity from work, strong desires, a tendency to excess, and being fond of ruler pursuits, and also liking occultism. It sits north of constellation Virgo, between constellations Coma and Orion, and it spans over 35 degrees of the zodiac in the signs of Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio. The 9th tarot trump, the Hermit, is associated with this constellation. Draco, or the dragon, represents the dragon that guarded the golden apples in the Hera's orchard, or the garden of the Hesperides, the nymphs of the sunset, or the nymphs of the west. According to others, it is either the dragon thrown by the giants at Minerva in their war with the gods, or the serpent Python slain by Apollo after the flood. Ptolemy said the bright stars in this constellation are like Saturn and Mars, Draco giving an artistic, emotional, and somber nature, a penetrating and analytical mind, much travel and many friends, but dangers from robbery and of accidental poisoning. It is a constellation that sits in the far northern sky, and it spans over 250 degrees of the zodiac from the signs Aries to Sagittarius. Ancients said that when a comet was here, poison was scattered over the world, and 13 Terratram, the death, is associated with this constellation. Eridanus, or the river, is a southern constellation under constellation Taurus between Cetus and Orion, also one of the oldest of the first 48 constellations listed by Ptolemy and sixth largest of the modern 88 constellations, and the one that extends farthest in the sky from north to south. The name was taken as a Latin name for the real Po River, the longest Italian river, and also for the name of a minor river in Athens. Eridanus spans 19 degrees of the zodiac in the signs of Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Like I mentioned a second ago, Eridanus represents the river Padus or Po, into which Phaeton fell when slain by Jupiter for having set the world on fire by misguiding the chariot of his father Phoebus. So according to Ptolemy, all the stars within this constellation, with the exception of Achernar, are like Saturn, Achernar possessing a nature more like Jupiter. To ancient Egyptians, it was connected to the river Nile, and in Mesopotamia, it was associated with the river Tigris or Euphrates. Eridanus gives a love of knowledge and science, much travel and many changes, especially at sea, and dangers of drowning. Now, what is also interesting about Eridanus is that it is a home to about 200 galaxies, and at the same time a home to a whole of nothing. And that is called a cold spot or supervoid, the void of galaxies, stretching over about 1 billion light years, thus making Eridanus supervoid the biggest supervoid ever discovered. And let's do two more for today, Ophiuchus and Serpens. Ophiuchus or Serpentarius, or the serpent bearer constellation, is said to represent the infant Hercules, who strangled two serpents sent by Juno to kill him as he was asleep in his cradle. It is a northern constellation sitting above the constellation Scorpio. It spans 30 degrees of the zodiac in the sign of Sagittarius. Ptolemy said it is like Saturn and moderately like Venus, giving a passionate, blindly good-hearted, wasteful, and easily seduced nature, with little happiness, unseen dangers, strife, and slander. This constellation has also been called Aesculapius, and it was held to rule medicines. The 16th Terratram tower is associated with this constellation. Last one for today is Serpens or the Serpent. This is a northern constellation sitting above constellation Scorpio, and it spans 60 degrees of the zodiac in the signs Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn. Legend says when Glaucus, son of Minos, king of Crete, was drowned in a barrel of red honey, Aesculapius was sent to restore him to life and was shut in a secret chamber with the body. While he was standing in the chamber wondering what to do, the serpent entered and he killed her. After that, another serpent came in bearing a herb which it placed on the head of the dead serpent, restoring it to life. And Aesculapius used the same herb, thus restoring Glaucus. The serpent was placed in heaven, and some writers have identified Ophiuchus with Aesculapius. As I have mentioned previously, others say it is a serpent that was sent to slay Hercules in his cradle. According to Ptolemy, Serpens is like Saturn and Mars. It is said to give wisdom, craft, deceit, malice, and danger of poison. In tarot, it is represented by the Four of Cups card, embodying the profound mysteries of healing. And this is it for today. I could probably make 100 videos about constellations and fixed star, and who knows, perhaps I will. Today's quote is by none other than Albert Einstein, and I think he does not need any introduction. He said, "Look at the stars and from them learn." Thank you for being here today. Next video, like I said at the beginning, will be again in these lines. So if you want, please subscribe, press a like button, leave a comment. I love to learn, and many heads are smarter than one. So please do share with me your knowledge, and I will be seeing you in a couple of days. Bye.